Christmas, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Northwest Yearly Meeting Podcast. We hope that you find the conversations to be helpful and enlightening as you hear from those in the evangelical friends world. Once again, thanks for listening. Go ahead and subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss future episodes. And we hope that you have a very merry and jolly Christmas season this year. Now, enjoy the episode. All right. Merry Christmas, everybody. It's the December episode. So, yeah, I know I'm wearing a Santa hat. When I put it on, Austin was like, "Are you just putting that on for yourself since we don't do video?" And I was like, "Yes, I am doing it for myself." Gotta get in the season, you know?
I mean, yes. I love the Christmas season and like everything a part of it. So it's like more power to you for wearing a Christmas hat. I just thought it was funny because you're just like, nobody's ever going to see this.
I just had it laying around. We were just talking. We were doing some decorating here. This was in our box of our stuff. So I knew where it was very quickly. So I was able to just go grab it. I didn't like spend an hour searching to get this hat just for this purpose. But yeah.
Okay. Before we start, I also was noting how my family is already in full Christmas mode and celebrating, even though it's November at this point of recording. So
some people start early. There's one house on my street that's already like fully decked out with the lights. Like, so we have our lights on. I have them on like our bushes and stuff, but I haven't set them to actually turn on yet. They're just there and prepared. I took advantage of a warm day the other week to put them out there. But there's one guy on my street who's got them all out and he's been turning them on already. So I'm like, more power to you.
I'm not quite there. But this kind of like leads me into like my whole, into kind of our topic is definitely in the Christmas shopping mode. And thinking about gifts, thinking about all of that stuff. And one of the things that at least struggle with is this kind of the weird combination between Christmas and consumerism, and how like they're kind of mutually opposed to one another, but yet like here we find ourselves in this kind of this weird mess where we are torn between these two things in our our religious life and our culture, and the kind of conflict that comes into all of that.
Yeah, so that's what we wanted to talk about today. It's just Austin and I. We thought everyone's busy around the holidays, trying to schedule another guest in here. We just didn't want to add to anyone's plate. But yeah, this idea of consumerism versus the true meaning for the season, but you also don't want to be the Grinch who doesn't buy anybody gifts. And it's just like, that balance of what we do. And then also pair that with like the Quaker and Friends, ideas of like simplicity and things like that. And it's like, well, I don't want to be getting a bunch of useless junk just to fill my house with things. Like, I don't need to just collect stuff if I'm not going to use it. So yeah, we wanted to talk about that idea and just kind of tease it out and wrestle with it a little bit. I will say before we get into too much, maybe on the more serious side of this, one of my favorite Christmas movies, it is probably it is in my top 3. I just don't know. It's not my top 1, but it's in the top 3. Is Christmas with the Cranks. Have you seen this movie?
Yeah.
With Tim Allen. Yeah. And it kind of deals with this topic a little bit. Like they're a little bit. So let me just say, they're empty nesters. Their daughter has now gone away to college or whatever. And he doesn't want to do the Christmas stuff anymore. He's like, I don't want to spend all the money on cards. I don't want to spend all the money on Christmas parties. I don't want to do all this stuff. Like, and he works it out in the budget where like, he's like, we can actually save money if we don't do any of that stuff. We don't buy a tree. We don't get the lights. We don't do the parties. And we just go on a cruise instead. Now that's, he's being
selfish.
He's being a Grinch. He's being selfish, But he's like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Like, it's too much. And I think everyone feels that around Christmas time. There's so much going on. It's like, I got to go to this party. I got to buy this person a gift. I got to go to my office Christmas party. And it's just like, it can kind of drain the fun and the like real reason for celebrating Christmas out of the month, out of the time, because you feel so obligated to do all this other stuff. And so I do like that movie. Yes, at the end of it, spoiler alert, his daughter last minute decides she is going to come back, and then they have to like plan a massive Christmas party in like 12 hours notice. And so it's a pretty funny movie. If you have the chance to watch Christmas with the Cranks, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, okay. So I guess that there's like kind of like two modes of thinking about simplicity, at least when it comes to Christmas time.
Yeah.
I think that there is like the simplicity of, or like, we can talk about how we use our time and the like all the effort that goes around during the holidays. Because at least personally speaking, as a pastor, Christmas is my busiest time of the year. Like my schedule gets crazy packed with all sorts of things, and a lot of things that seem, in my opinion, sometimes unnecessary. And so there's like lots of stuff, lots of things that quote unquote need to happen, but and it can be, and that to me can feel very, very draining, all the like unnecessary sort of things. And then there's also just like, I mean, and then just thinking about Christmas in general, and that I also apply to lots of people too, like with the extra parties and the get-togethers and the extra school performances and visiting different people and having to schedule all that thing in, because like I know at least with myself, like my family, it's kind of all over the place, and Christmas is a big deal because it's like lots of Christmas celebrations to go to. But then there's also, I think, also in the kind of conversation is the like the stuff, all the stuff with Christmas. I think in our culture we have so much stuff that gets kind of, I mean, think about Black Friday and like all the sales of things that oftentimes we don't actually need, but are a good deal, so we just like buy them. And then the purchasing of, and well, I think the purchasing of gifts isn't a bad thing. Everybody likes a gift, right?
Yes.
But it becomes like this like craziness of just like how much stuff we can buy, rather than thinking about like, is this something that is actually needed? And I find my own self, like people ask me like, what do you want for Christmas? What do you want for Christmas? And I find that I just get very absorbed in material possessions this time of year. It becomes a very big temptation for me to like, to be like, oh, I want this thing, and oh, I want that thing, and ooh, this thing. And then I kind of get kind of absorbed on it.
Yeah. I think going on that topic of like gift giving, and when you say like everyone likes a gift and everyone likes to give gifts, but it can like expand out and out and out. And it's like, I just got a thing at my work. It's like, we're going to do a Secret Santa for people at work. And it's like, okay, that's fun. Like, I don't think that that's a not fun idea, but it's like, now this is just another person that I have to buy a gift for, which then like just spreads the gift giving budget even thinner. So it's like, now I'm going to have to give everyone like a cheaper, not as great gift. And so that one thing that comes to mind for me with that is like, I don't know where people are, and I don't know how your family does things, Austin, but like both my families, like my extended family and my wife's extended family, like they are very large. Like when we all get together for Christmas, there's like I'm one of five, and everyone's got a spouse, and then my parents, same with my wife, it's like she's one of four, everyone has a spouse, and everyone has like at least 3 kids. So you get together for Christmas and there's like 20 people suddenly that need a gift. And so we made the shift like a couple of years ago to being like, we just draw names and you just get one person a gift. Which like at the beginning, going from getting every single person a gift to I'm just going to get one person a gift, it does kind of feel like this feels a little weird. Like, and sometimes there are people like maybe better. It's like, oh, I would know really well what to get my sister-in-law for a gift this year. But then you don't draw your sister-in-law's name, and it's like, now what am I going to do? So it can put you in some more weirder positions or harder positions. But I found that it's a lot more simple. Going back to that idea, I only have to get one person a gift now, and that you're not buying 20 people gifts. You can buy one person a little bit more of an expensive thing. Not that necessarily like if something's expensive, it's automatically better, but you can generally get someone like a nicer quality something, instead of just getting them like a t-shirt or something, you could get them like a nice quality sweater or something that's going to cost you a little bit more, that if I had to buy 20 of these, I couldn't do it, but I can just buy one. So that's
Yeah.
one way that I find like simplifying things around the holidays, especially within like families, like you have the power to do that. Um, to just
Well,
suggest that if your family doesn't do that and be like, what if we just all draw names and then we set a price limit or whatever, and we just have to get one thing? Like,
yeah. So, I mean, in my family, kind of talking about that, growing up, I had a very large extended family, particularly on my dad's side, and we did kind of a gift exchange. But the rule was like, you know, I mean, he was one of seven who all had multiple kids and their spouses. So it was like, yeah, Christmas would happen and it'd be like 40 people would show up. That's a lot. That's a lot of gifts to give to everybody. So that just like wasn't plausible. So
mm-hmm,
the way it kind of worked in my extended family, yeah, we drew names, and then we kind of took that and we kind of did the same thing in my wife's family, because she has siblings, but they all have lots of children,
mm-hmm,
and again, too many people, too many gifts. But what we kind of added a twist to it. Not only do you only usually get to pick one person, you only get like one name. We set a dollar amount limit of $5.
mm-hmm.
I think because like there were some families who would have to do like 8 gifts, and that just, that's like
Yeah,
a lot of money if you were
it
like
is.
$20, right? But it had to be handmade of some kind. So you could like buy materials to make something. And that was
Okay.
kind of a way to like decrease the the craziness. But yeah,
Yeah.
like there is this thing where giving gifts can be a good thing, but sometimes it can also feel over the top and can get kind of out of hand
Mm-hmm.
at the same time if you're like having to give gifts to, you know, tens of people.
Yeah.
It can get kind of overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just looking at this too. This is a quote kind of like on Quaker and the practice of simplicity and that kind of stuff. This is from the Friends Journal. It says, when we practice simple living, we collectively say a resounding no to the consumerism, materialism, and the waste of our modern industrial society. And I think about that like within this concept of getting gifts. Like if you get a bunch of things, like it can be wasteful. Like someone buys you a cheap little something that you're never going to use and it just sits in a closet somewhere, or worse yet, you just like throw it away a few months later. It's like it's better to be intentional and maybe give less, but it's going to actually get used than just causing waste and junk for people.
Yeah, I know for me, I don't know how many times I've gotten just like I used to think that like white elephant gift exchanges were fun, and now
Mm-hmm.
I hate them for this exact reason.
Yeah.
Because I hate getting stuff that like I can't use.
Yeah. Yep. And
It's
then you're like
pointless.
obligated to hold it. I know someone gave my wife a pair of socks like a while. It wasn't for a Christmas thing, I don't think, but it's literally been sitting like the pair of socks still with like, whatever, they're like tied to each other, still like off the shelf on top of our dresser in our room. And I said something the other day, like, are you gonna wear these socks? And she's like, those just no, they're not really my style. But it's like she got them in some kind of gift exchange like that, and she
Yeah.
felt obligated to take it, and now they've just been sitting in our room forever.
And and then you feel bad. You're like, okay, like how long do I keep this thing before I get rid of it? I know that for at least for me and my family, my mom, her like main love language is giving gifts. And so around the holidays, it's just like so many gifts, but a lot of it's not great.
Yeah.
It's like, because for her, it's like the number of things is like how much she shows that she cares, not like the quality of the thing. So rather than giving like one good item for me and my wife or like our children, she's going to give us like 50 items.
Yeah.
And a lot of it just gets kind of wasted a lot of the time. And you're just like, and like it wastes her money and it wastes like our space and it, not only that, like it wastes resources in creation, right? Because it's like, because like I think we tend to forget that like all of our material objects have a history to them that like you just like you like that $5 item has a history. Like there's a reason why that $5 item that you got at Walmart is so cheap, and that has knock-on effects even if we don't see it, right? Like we don't necessarily see how that plastic item was extruded from the ground in an oil field in Texas and then shipped halfway across the world to China that was like molded into some sort of Chinese plastic and then was put on a shipping carrier back to America and then like drove around to a store and then but then that like all of that has like costs embedded into it, right? And it kind of reminds me of what is it? John Woolman's quote about searching your material possessions and seeing if there's the seeds of violence or war in that. And he's obviously talking, his context was talking about to like look at our possessions to see if they were made by slave labor, because he was an abolitionist, and how like, and to be aware of the fact that like if you're buying material that is being used by slaves, then like because of your desires to have like lots of like fine clothes, like there is a cost in there that you might not be seeing. So there's a reason why cotton was so cheap for the Americans and for the British, and John Woolman was trying to like bring light to that. Let me see if I can pull up the quote. Quick.
No, I mean, you can look for that, but I'm reading some similar stuff. Like it just, it says this topic of simplicity with friends considers a lot of different stuff, not just the mere idea of having less of stuff, but this idea that you're talking about, like, is the item that you're purchasing, do you have to consider a number of ethical and moral factors? Like, does the clothing company employ slave labor overseas? How do their production processes impact the environment? All that kind of stuff. And I know that's a lot to think about. And sometimes you can't just like maybe readily know all that information. So I think some people might be like, well, I can't know that stuff. And for some, maybe you can't. And so that's, I guess, fine. That's up to you and your conscience per se. Like you could definitely spend a lot of time just researching every single possible thing and like never get anything done. But like if you know some of these things, like once you learn about something, one company or whatever, if they're doing kind of unethical practices to make their products, then I guess we have to wrestle with moving on from that and finding an alternative, even if it was the best pair of socks you've ever worn in your life. But,
Yeah, so here's the quote. It says, "May we look upon our treasures, the furniture in our house, and our garments, and try to discover whether the seeds of war have nourishment in these our possessions." So it's kind of this sense of like, looking at like the kind of social aspect of our items, because like our items don't come from nowhere. They don't like just like magically appear. They have to, they first come from the earth in some regard.
Yeah.
Like any product, no matter how like artificial it is, has come from the earth. And so then when we think about that, like then they have to be then processed into an item and then sold into an item, and like there's a whole chain of things that could be, a part of that chain that we could think about, like, do I actually need this item or not? So I found a quote earlier that kind of help, because I think that with Quakers and this, I think especially with simplicity, it can start feeling kind of like abstract, or like, what's the reason behind it? Because it can be like, we can make up all these rules around simplicity. And I thought that this is kind of a good heart of it, is that the earliest friend, and this, I'm getting this from a book called Traditional Quaker Christianity. The earliest friends did not use terms like simplicity or plainness. They merely thought themselves obedient to the scriptures that commanded that the kingdom of God is to be Christians' highest priority. And what that meant was that one ought not to spend time, money, or energy on unnecessary items or occasions. The earliest generation of Friends emphasized simplicity in dress and possessions without an emphasis on outward regimented plainness. So, like, oftentimes when we think of like the Quaker practice of simplicity, we think of, like the oatmeal guy.
Yeah,
right?
they all wore gray and all that.
They all wore gray, and had their, like, meeting houses didn't have like any form of decorative art or anything like that, and using things like, like having this very, like, they were like Amish in that sense, in which you could look upon them and go, oh, these people are Quakers. But the earliest Friends were not like that. They were contemporary. Their writings were, using the language of the day. But they stressed on not trying to, the whole point of simplicity wasn't that because it was just like a good idea or a life optimization hack, or like the way I kind of see in like Marie Kondo, and like, like, I'm gonna get rid of things to spark joy, and it's a way to like to be self-helpy. Like that was not the point. The point was to seek the kingdom. And I think that we kind of can, I think in a lot of, like, I know, later Friends stuff, I think that can kind of get besides the point. Like the point was seeking the kingdom of God, and not letting our possessions or our time kind of become not to become distracted by the things of this world. I have another quote around this, the whole idea of simplicity is actually being about eliminating distraction from our lives, that I thought is kind of a helpful way of thinking that simplicity is ultimately around distraction, and not around just being distracted from the kingdom, rather than just simply like getting rid of our stuff. Because even like Friends, like Barclay acknowledges in his apology that Quaker simplicity isn't just simply like, it isn't like having just only the bare minimum of items required for living.
Right.
And that, like, what's simple in for one people could not necessarily be simple for another. And he uses kind of the example of, in some parts of the world, silk is abundant. And so you wear silk, and like that is kind of a key thing for living. But in other parts of the world, silk is considered a luxury. And he's obviously talking kind of about in England, silk was a luxury because why? They don't have silkworms. And so they would have had to like get silk from like places like India and get it shipped to England, where it would have been very expensive and very fancy. But where wool was there, they could have very high quality wool products that would have maybe seen as a luxury in some other context. And I'll give an example I recently read on the news is so frankincense is very widespread in the country of Oman, but frankincense as like an essential oil is very, very, very expensive, and it is kind of seen as this it's seen as a luxury. It's seen as a luxury good, and over there it's like kind of like everywhere. and there's kind of like a business to it. And so it's like in Oman, yeah, frankincense, you like burn it all the time. It's kind of like it's a common gift that you give to somebody moves into a new home. Like people burn it with lavender. They have perfumes on it because it's like readily available. But like you can't find that in the Northwest, right?
Yeah.
We don't have those trees. So it's like simplicity is somewhat culturally situated, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's what's simple in, Idaho or Oregon or Washington is going to be definitely different than say what's simple in say, Oman or China or
Mhm.
Argentina.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think one of the things that comes up with this, though, like one of the hard things just with this idea, especially around Christmas time, like it's one thing to say, like, I want to be living intentionally and simply in like June, when like no one's really buying you anything or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think the hard thing, especially around Christmas with this idea, is just like that is such a part of the celebration and part of the season is like this idea of gift giving and getting gifts and giving somebody something and mailing Christmas cards. Like that is just really like, for better or for worse, like a lot of what this holiday has become.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, in a way, going back to like the Christmas with the Cranks thing, like when you suggest that to somebody, like, I'm not going to do that this year, or you don't need to get me a gift. Like, I don't need anything. Like, you do kind of come across like people are like, like, what do you mean you don't want to do that? Or you don't need any gift. Like, come on, you got to get something. Like, just tell me so. Like, I wrestle with that in the sense that like I don't usually need a lot of stuff or like I don't have a running list of like an Amazon wish list that when someone asks me what I want for Christmas, I can just immediately forward them my list. Like I really have to think what I want. And it's hard. Like people are like, come on, give me your list. And I'm like, I don't have anything. And so like, and I had a friend who, and I'll talk about this in a second, but like when his family kind of made this transition in their life of like we don't need a lot of gifts, like he said like his extended family kind of really like unintentionally outcasted them. It's like then they didn't invite them to this or whatever because they didn't want them to feel bad because their kids were going to get gifts at this thing and whatever. And so it just became like a whole awkward situation. And so I do think that's like the hard thing of navigating this season in particular is like because it has become such a consumeristic holiday, like
Yeah.
people do just think it's weird that you
Yeah.
don't
And I
want
think that,
anything.
well, and I think that that's part of the aspect of why I would say simplicity is a spiritual discipline
Mm,
in a testimony, right? Like the whole idea around Quaker testimonies was like you live differently so then people see the fruit of your lives, right?
mm-hmm.
And if the fruit of your life is if you're determined to live simply for the kingdom of God, it's going to have kind of knock-on effects in the world around you. And so that's going to kind of, it's going to affect your world if you
Yeah.
kind of take it seriously. Though I do think that there is a balance between, or like there should be a moderation between being so severe that you can't have like any sort of like that you can't participate, because I know that there's like the kind of the people who it's like they kind of just disavow anything that
Mm-hmm.
like is like maybe Christmas related. I know I have some people like that. Like they don't do Christmas trees, they don't do gifts really, and so it ends up becoming like a thing. And
Yeah.
then you're like you don't want to like be that person either, where you're like you know being weird about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do think that there is a way to have a healthy difference between, because like I know I've had conversations with people in my life who love to give gifts, and I'd be like, Like, I just don't need all that stuff. And that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's been kind of a being like,
Well, and it gives you an opportunity to really talk through them, like you
yeah,
said, being a witness, like instead of just being like, yeah, I don't need anything, and then walking away. Like, really, you can have that conversation. Now, they may still at the end of the conversation be like, that's a little weird. I just want to buy him a gift. But like, at least you can kind of talk it out a little bit. And that, uh, so I don't know if you've ever heard of, I guess it's a nonprofit or an organization. It's called Advent Conspiracy.
yes.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what I was talking about. Like my pastor friend who like this was years ago, but felt really convicted and like just kind of said like we're not really gonna do gifts and that kind of stuff. Like and he said he just felt kind of ostracized from his family because they didn't understand it. But I think it's a good organization. I don't know if it's an organization um or a movement, but like their whole thing, like you can go to their website, adventconspiracy.org. It was started by some pastors. It says this is on their about page. A few pastors were lamenting how they'd come to the end of an Advent season every year exhausted and sensing that they had missed it, the awe-inducing, soul-satisfying mystery of the incarnation of Jesus. For many of us, we're drowning in a sea of financial debt and endless lists of gifts to buy. We struggled to find the connection between our Christmas to-do list and the story of Jesus' birth. An overwhelming stress had overtaken worship and celebration. The time of the year when focusing on Christ should be the easiest was often the hardest. Somehow this had become the new normal. So in 2006, three pastors decided to try something different. They called it the Advent Conspiracy Movement, and they came up with 4 tenets. And the 4 tenets of their program is worship fully, spend less, give more, and love everybody. And then they go more in depth on that, like on the worship fully, it says nearly every character in the Christmas story that encountered our King responded in the same way, worship. Let's make the conscious effort to reorient our hearts toward Christ this Christmas season and begin with worship, and may it end with worship. And then the spend less, I think that's a lot of what we've been talking about. Like we know that mindless consumption is not the way to celebrate Jesus. Spending less does not mean spending nothing. Rather, we will thoughtfully evaluate what companies and causes we support through our purchases. That sounds very Quaker right there. And then the give more, which those two kind of things, when you spend less but give more, you're like, huh? It says the best gifts celebrate a relationship, and most often they require our time and energy. Relational giving means that we think about the other person, who they are, and what they care about. We focus more on giving our undivided presence and less on a pile of gifts under the tree. So yeah, I think that's a really good, like this is a good organization. They have books and things that go along with it, but
Yeah, I remember it was like really popular, like circa 2008 to 2012.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was like a big thing in my world
yeah,
then, and talking about things like, you know, showing like how much people spend on Christmas gifts in America,
yeah,
and like
yeah.
how,
They have a really interesting video with all that kind of stuff, like the average money that's spent and like all these crazy infographics. It's
and then
crazy.
like how like there's like other things where it's just like, you could drill like if everybody didn't spend what they spent on Christmas gifts in America for 1 year, they could drill like enough wells in Africa to like, or like around the world, to end like water problems.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, and those things, like I always kind of like look at them and be like, well, like there's like other problems with that. Like if you think about them,
Sure. I think that's kind of like a
but it kind of gives you a
yeah, it's a false equivalency, I guess, or whatever is the way to put it. It's like I know not everyone's gonna spend money on that, but
or I was going to say like you can drill a well, but that doesn't necessarily end water insecurity.
yes.
And
But
that
it does
yeah,
just get to go to show like how much money people spend. I'm
yeah.
actually kind of surprised. I just Googled like how much does the average American spend on Christmas, and this is the top result here with really not too much research into it. But according to the National Retail Federation, the average American plans to spend $826 in 2022, the last year, on Christmas gifts, food, and decorations. Of that 820 $6. Around 500 are spent on gifts for family members. Most popular of these gifts are clothing, toys, and gift cards. That really seems low to me. $826. I mean, I don't spend that much, but I kind of assumed it would be more.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what do you mean as like what you're including in that. Because if
Yeah.
it's like if you include groceries for like festive dinners
Mm-hmm.
and travel fees to like go like say you have like a it that doesn't actually seem like a crazy amount to me, because it's like, so say that you travel and you have a festive dinner and then you give maybe a couple $100 worth of gifts in total. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
seem, because it's like if you give say, oh, I don't know, like I think in my family we'll probably give a couple $100 worth of gifts,
Mm-hmm.
like in total, right? For like kids and grandparents and
Yeah.
friends and like family members and each other. Like that doesn't actually seem like a ton of money if you think about it.
Right.
Like in total, if you like were to, but that's still a lot of money.
Yeah. It's interesting. It definitely, I mean, so I guess that's just the wrestling factor is like Christmas can easily turn into just a big consumerism. I'm going to go on Amazon and spend $500, or I'm going to go to Target and spend $500, or, whatever. But, and not saying that that's totally wrong, because we do have people in our lives that we love and we want to buy a gift because maybe they've said they always wanted something and we saw and we thought about them. So there can be good intentions and those kind of things. But to remember that there's more to Christmas
Well, yeah, and
than
I
all
think
the
that
hustle and bustle.
yeah, and I think that one of the things that I appreciated, which is that it's not about not having things,
Mm.
because like you can have things, that's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having possessions is not inherently evil, but it's discerning what is, like how is this pointing us to the kingdom of God,
Mm.
right? Like, and I think that like when Jesus warns of like the rich, like the Jesus says a lot about money and not a lot of good things to say about rich people in the Gospels, and his frequent injunction to them is to like sell their possessions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, I think our possessions or our money can often become a distraction to the kingdom, that we get wrapped up in it. And
Yeah.
it's really hard then to like break ourselves away from that. And I think that's why it's when it says like woe to you rich, or not, what, I can't remember the verse off the top of my head, but essentially I should know this. But essentially, like it's just easy. It's easier for a poor person to get into heaven than a rich man, because it's like
Yeah.
because the distractions of the things can kind of like, and the concerns can keep us away from doing God's kingdom work. And here's a quote from that I kind of liked from Barclay. It says the chief purpose of all religion is to redeem men from the spirit and the vain pursuits of the world, and leading them into an inward communion with God. So, there's lots of things in our life that are kind of pointless and are distractions, and it can be really hard then to discern between our like kind of the true thing versus all the other options. And
Mm-hmm.
so maybe what are some ways that we can pursue simplicity during Christmas time? I know that we kind of been circling this.
Yeah, no. That's good. I think one is to just like, I guess, be intentional about what you're gonna do, even if it looks a little different um than traditional, what people are gonna do or your family does, and stick to that. Another thing would be like maybe just like, it's kind of like I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but like set aside some nights within the month of December where you like intentionally aren't going out to go shopping or aren't going to a Christmas party and maybe even aren't just going to mindlessly sit on the couch and watch Home Alone, but like where you're intentionally taking some time to reflect, maybe read the Christmas story in the Gospels, and just reflect on Christmas and what we're really celebrating. Because you can go to the store the next day, it'll still be there.
Yeah. I mean,
Maybe, depending on what you're buying.
it's still probably going to be like, that's one of the things with like Black Friday, for example. I know that like by the time this comes out, we have already experienced that national holiday.
Mm-hmm.
But like most often those deals for Black Friday aren't very
They're
good.
not even that good.
They're not usually that good. And they usually will stay on sale throughout the rest of the day, throughout the season, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like you don't need to rush out on Friday after Thanksgiving to go purchase things, other than, there are those few items that get mega discounted, but there's like 4 of them in the store and you have to claw your way through them, which is like not very Christian to like fight for, a flat screen TV.
Right. What about you? Any ways to be intentional?
I think maybe the first step, I'm kind of like processing this all out loud. I think one of the first things is just to come back to like, what is the point of things?
Mm-hmm.
Being reminded and contemplating on like, well, like what's the greater purpose? Like, what is God calling me to in life? Is it the accumulation of things, or is it to preach the good news to people? And is it to, have the newest smartwatch, or is it having a deeper communion with Christ? And I think that like when we kind of take a step back and to kind of remember being like, okay, what's the purpose? Because I think we can just have easily kind of like a mission drift in life. And then it's always good to kind of come back to that. And I think that's why like worship is so important, and why like even in the Christmas season, where I think a lot of people come to church after they haven't, I think it's a good time to kind of come in and to, I know this is going to sound very quickly, like center ourselves on and center ourselves on Christ. And but then with that, I think that even if we don't want to acknowledge it, I still think that a lot of us in the Christmas season are still very selfish, and are very concerned with the accumulation of things, for I think all sorts of reasons. And I think one of the things that we can do is practicing generosity, but generosity in not just simply like the purchasing of just gifts for people, because I think that there's like that's but I do think that there is a kind of generosity that comes with, giving of your time. I know that for a lot of people, time is their greatest resource now. I heard it once, like I found that it has become easier to get people to give money to a task than having them come and like volunteer for something.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I don't know if that's like true for everybody, where I feel like that was like the opposite was true not too long ago, where lots of people were willing to give their time but not of their money. I think the reason being is that so many people value their time much more nowadays than they did, like we just have like, I think, a lot of demands of our time. And so I think a lot of people are just like, their time is their greatest resource.
Yeah.
And so being willing to give of your time and yourself might be a good way to kind of simplify, because that requires you probably then to eliminate some other task that you're spending your time on, because time is a finite resource. We can't get it back.
You could like write a check for 5 different things at the same time, but you can only be at one place at one time.
Well, and I'm just thinking, if you have a schedule, and we're all busy, right? We all kind of like, we're at the altar of the busy schedule. That one of the things with giving of your time, it really means like getting rid of something in your schedule to do something else, typically. So that might be like not watching that episode, or like not streaming Netflix for, a couple hours after work. It might be going to go and volunteer at some place, giving of yourself. Or it might mean, rather than purchasing a gift, making something instead for somebody, even though that's going to be a lot more time consuming.
But that makes me think, like, so my wife has this really great recipe for like sugar cookies, and like it comes with this special icing that you can like really get decorative with it. It's pretty, but it's involved. So it's like it would be easy to just go buy some cookies or something to take them to someone or visit. But around Christmas time, we usually do make these for people, but it's like it's like a 2 or 3 hour ordeal where, it would be easier to just go buy cookies and deliver them, but it's not as meaningful. It's not as personal, all that kind of stuff, but it just takes a lot of time.
And then I think also just simply maybe even just asking me, like, the money that you're going to give, or the gifts that you're going to give me, like the amount of money, maybe you could ask to donate it, being like, I really don't need anything this year.
Yeah.
And being willing to like donate it. I think also, I know I get asked a lot of like, what do you want for Christmas? And that, to me, kind of, as I said earlier, kind of sets off this like thinking of like, well, what do I want? What do I want? And then you spend a lot of time thinking about those things. And then that kind of starts a cycle of being like, oh, I want this, or I want that, and going to make a list here. And then just being like, like I don't, and being willing, if somebody gives you something, just being kind of like holding it open.
Yep.
Rather than, because I think that there's always the temptation at Christmas time to be like, well, what am I going to get from the holidays, rather than just being like happy with what I'm giving.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, before we wrap up here, I do have a quick little rapid fire Christmas edition of like this or that.
Okay.
Should we go through these really quick?
Definitely.
Okay. Real tree or fake tree?
Real tree.
I'm real tree too. We talked about this ahead of time. I told Austin, I was like, I feel like I might switch, but no, sticking with the real tree.
Well, fun fact, the things that me and my family, we're going to go cut our Christmas tree down from the forest this year. We've always wanted to do it, but if you go to, BLM land, you can get a permit to get a tree for like, it's like $5.
Yeah.
And I don't know where you live, but
I've seen that. Yeah.
I know that a lot of places, Christmas trees can be really expensive.
Yeah.
It can be a way to simplify. And we're going to go do it with our friends. So it's going to be kind of like a fun way to hang out together.
There you go. Okay. Christmas gifts or Christmas food?
That's a tough one for me.
I think I'd ultimately have to go with food if I did. If I had to make a choice here. Just because going back to this whole topic here, it's like I could be perfectly content, I think, with just hanging out with people, as long as we're still having like, the turkey and the pies and the cookies and all that kind of stuff. If no one got any gifts at the end of it, I think I'd be okay with that. But if we just got together and gave gifts and ate spaghetti, that just wouldn't feel like Christmas to me.
I guess, yeah, okay. I guess I could be okay. I really do like gifts. This is I think this is something that I need to work on. But I legitimately
I like
love
them too,
gifts.
but yeah.
But I guess, yeah, I think when I think of Christmas, I think of the foods that that I don't have any other time of the year. So I guess Christmas food.
Okay. When it comes to Christmas movies, Elf or Home Alone?
Oh, that's my choice.
That's what it's got here. Got to watch one of those. I'm going Elf.
I'm gonna go Elf.
Yeah, I like Home Alone, but Elf is better.
I just don't. I mean, I think the whole, concept of Home Alone is kind of problematic.
True.
It's such a like a quintessential 90s movie that
it is.
It has a soft place for me, but I like the vibe more. I'm just not a huge Will Ferrell person, so I'm like also like
what about, okay, this could be controversial. Opening one gift on Christmas Eve, or strictly you must wait until Christmas morning?
I mean, I've done both in my life. I kind of like doing everything Christmas morning.
I was about to say, I'm a strictly Christmas morning person myself. Anytime I hear about people who do gifts on Christmas Eve, I'm like, that is just not right.
I have to go to so many different celebrations that inevitably what ends up happening is that gifts are opened on Christmas Eve no matter what. So
yeah, that is true. Okay, last one. Dress up for Christmas or be in your PJs all day?
Well, in my family, we're in our PJs.
Yeah,
we're not going out on Christmas.
Not going anywhere. Yeah, I'm going PJs all day as well.
I mean, yeah, that's like just a stay at home day.
Yeah,
I might go to a movie. I've done that in the past. That was a big thing with my family growing up. We went to the movies.
I know that is. Yeah, movies come out on Christmas. That is a big thing, huh? There's a lot of movies that come out on Christmas.
Yeah. Though I always feel bad if I go somewhere of the people who have to work on Christmas, because I'm like, nobody should be working on Christmas.
I know.
Have the day off. So that's why I'm like kind of like, I don't want to go out because I feel bad for the people who have to work.
All right. Well, we hope everyone enjoyed. Merry Christmas as you're getting ready for this holiday season. Hopefully you listen to this and maybe just have some thoughts and maybe slow down a little bit more this Christmas season. We're not saying you have to skip all the parties and not buy anybody anything, but we just want to be intentional about what we're doing and remember the real ultimate reason for Christmas is celebrating the birth of Jesus and him coming into this world for us. That's all. Awesome. Yep. See you guys next year.